Hey, everyone. I'm James. I've never been much of a sharer, but life's hit me with some punches lately, and I need to let it out. Maybe someone here can help make sense of it all. I had what I thought was a normal, stable life. Wife, 2 great kids, a good job. Jessica and I had been married for 12 years. We weren't perfect, but we were a team. Or at least I thought we were. A couple of months ago, I started noticing changes. Jessica was dressing up more, spending hours on her phone, always working late. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she just needed space. But when she started canceling our family plans, even skipping Sophia's school play, something didn't sit right. My gut told me to dig deeper. One night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone. It wasn't a proud moment, but I had to know. And there it was, messages with someone named Michael. Sweet words, plans to meet, even pictures. My heart dropped. This wasn't just flirting. This was betrayal. The next day, I confronted her. "Who's Michael?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't even flinch. She admitted it, just like that. She said he was a businessman she met through work and that they'd been seeing each other for months. "I'm not happy, James," she told me, like that justified it. I was stunned. Not happy? And you couldn't tell me before throwing everything away? Things spiraled fast. Jessica moved out within a week, taking Sophia and Ryan with her. "They're better off with me," she said. "I can provide more stability." Stability? The woman who shattered our family? But she played her cards well, spinning stories about how I'd been distant, how I didn't care enough. Before I knew it, I was in a custody battle I never thought I'd face. And I lost. Now, I'm sitting here in an empty house, trying to figure out how everything crumbled so quickly. My kids barely want to talk to me. Jessica's feeding them lies, and I can't even defend myself. I'm not sure where to go from here. I just know this isn't the life I pictured. Losing custody of Sophia and Ryan was like losing a part of myself. Watching them leave with Jessica that day, it broke me. I stood at the door waving, pretending to be strong for their sake, but inside, I was falling apart. They didn't look back. Maybe Jessica told them not to, or maybe they just didn't want to. Either way, the house felt dead silent once they were gone. For weeks, I tried to reach out. I called, texted, left voicemails. "Hey Sophia, it's Dad. Just checking in, how's school going?" Or, "Ryan, I saw the new Spider-Man trailer. We should catch it together soon, buddy." But all I got back was radio silence. Sometimes, I get a cold one-word reply from Sophia, "Fine or busy." Ryan didn't even pick up. It didn't take long to figure out that Jessica had been poisoning the well, telling them I was selfish, controlling, and couldn't make her happy. One day, Sophia finally answered a call. I was so relieved I could have cried. "Soph, hey. It's so good to hear your voice," I said, trying not to sound desperate. "Hi," she replied flatly. "How's school? Did you start that new art class we talked about?" I asked, hoping to spark something familiar. There was a pause, and then, "Dad, why are you calling? Mom said you didn't want to see us." I froze. "What?" "Sophia, that's not true. I've been trying to reach you both every day. I miss you guys so much." "Well, Mom said you moved on. That you didn't care about keeping the family together." Her voice cracked, and my chest tightened. "Sophia, listen to me. Whatever your mom is saying, it's not true. I wanted us to stay together. I fought for you and Ryan. I love you more than anything. You have to believe me." "I don't know, Dad. I don't know what to believe," she whispered. Then she hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at nothing. It wasn't just losing the custody battle, it was losing my kids' trust, their love. Jessica had twisted everything, and I didn't know how to untangle the mess she'd made. It's not like I was perfect. I worked long hours. Maybe I missed some important moments. But I was there, always there for bedtime stories, soccer games, school projects. I tried to give them a good life, a stable home. I thought I'd done enough. Clearly, I hadn't. The loneliness was unbearable. Everywhere I turned in the house, I saw reminders of them. Ryan's Legos scattered in the corner, Sophia's half-finished sketches still taped to the fridge. I couldn't even bring myself to clean up their rooms. It felt too final, like admitting they weren't coming back. I knew I had to do something, anything, to keep going. I couldn't drown in this. But what? Moving on felt impossible when every part of me was stuck in the past. That's when I started thinking about leaving. Not forever, just for a while. Maybe a change of scenery would help clear my head. Europe had always been a dream of mine. I used to talk about taking the kids to see the Eiffel Tower or ride a gondola in Venice. Jessica said it was a waste of money. Now, I realized it was just another thing I gave up for her. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I needed to get out of this house, out of this suffocating town where everyone whispered about the divorce. I needed to find myself again, to figure out who I was without Jessica, without the life I'd spent 12 years building. So, I booked a one-way ticket to Paris. It felt impulsive, reckless even, but maybe that's what I needed. Something unpredictable, something for me. I packed a bag, locked the house, and left. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I hoped I'd find it. Maybe, just maybe, the distance would give me the clarity I so desperately needed. Paris was nothing like I expected, and honestly, that's exactly what I needed. The city was chaotic but beautiful, its streets buzzing with life, its cafes full of strangers sharing stories over coffee. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I rented a small flat in the Montmartre district. It wasn't much, just a room with a kitchenette and a creaky bed, but it had a view of the Sacré-Cœur in the distance, and that was enough. I spent my mornings wandering the cobblestone streets, trying pastries from every bakery I passed, and my afternoons sitting by the Seine, watching the world go by. At first, it felt strange to be alone. I wasn't used to it. For over a decade, my life revolved around someone else, Jessica, the kids. Now it was just me, and I had no clue what to do with all the silence. But slowly, I started to appreciate it. No one needed anything from me. I could just exist. One night, I found myself in a little wine bar tucked away in an alley. It was quiet, dimly lit, with soft jazz playing in the background. I sat at the bar, nursing a glass of red, when a woman walked in. She was petite, with auburn hair that framed her face in loose waves. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a 1950s film, classy, yet a little lost. She caught my eye, and for a second, I thought about looking away, but she smiled. It wasn't one of those flirty smiles you see in movies. It was warm, genuine. She walked over, asked in accented English if the seat next to me was taken, and before I knew it, we were talking. Her name was Emily. She was British, originally from a small town in the Midlands, but had been living in Paris for the last 3 years. She worked as a freelance photographer and had this quiet sadness about her, like she'd been through her share of heartache too. We talked for hours, about life, about love, about the stupid mistakes we'd made trying to hold on to people who didn't deserve us. She told me about her ex, a man who'd left her feeling small and unworthy, and I told her about Jessica, about Michael, about how I felt like I'd failed as a father. "You didn't fail," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You're still here, still trying. That's not failure. That's strength." I don't know why, but her words hit me in a way nothing else had. Maybe it was because she didn't know me, didn't owe me anything. She was just a stranger who saw me for who I was, not who I used to be. When the bar closed, we exchanged numbers. I wasn't looking for anything romantic, I was too broken for that, but I liked the idea of having someone to talk to, someone who understood. Over the next few weeks, we met up a few times: coffee at a corner cafe, a stroll through the Louvre, a picnic in the Luxembourg Gardens. She made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years, and for the first time since Jessica left, I felt a flicker of hope. But the guilt lingered. Every time I laughed, every time I enjoyed myself, a voice in the back of my mind whispered, "What about Sophia and Ryan?" I couldn't stop wondering if they missed me or if Jessica had turned them so far against me that I was just a fading memory. I told Emily about it one afternoon while we sat on the steps of the Sacré-Cœur, watching the sun set over the city. "You're allowed to be happy, James," she said, resting her hand on mine. "Your kids need you to be happy. If you're stuck in the past, how can you show them the man you want them to see?" Her words stayed with me long after she left that night. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to stop punishing myself for something I couldn't control. I couldn't undo what Jessica had done. I couldn't rewrite the past. But I could decide how to live from here on out. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to be happy again. The days in Paris began to feel lighter. My morning started with fresh croissants and coffee at the café downstairs, where the old owner, Monsieur Dupont, always greeted me with a cheerful "Bonjour, monsieur." Afternoons were for exploring, getting lost in winding alleys or sitting in parks, sketching the skyline with the cheap pencils I'd picked up at a street market. I wasn't much of an artist, but it kept my hands busy, and that was enough. Emily became a constant presence in my life. We weren't a couple, not yet at least, but there was something comforting about having her around. We shared more of our stories, the kind of truths you can only tell someone who's already seen the worst of life. I told her about the night Jessica confessed her affair, how cold she'd been, as if breaking my heart was just another box on her to-do list. Emily told me about the day she realized her ex had been cheating on her for months, and how she'd walked out with nothing but a suitcase and a camera. We were both broken in different ways, but somehow together, we felt a little more whole. One crisp autumn morning, Emily invited me to join her on a photo shoot. She was working on a personal project, a series capturing moments of quiet joy across the city. I followed her to a hidden square in Le Marais, where a group of kids were playing soccer while their parents sipped coffee at a nearby cafe. Watching her work was mesmerizing. She had this way of seeing the world, of finding beauty in the smallest details. A child's laughter. The golden light hitting a cobblestone street. The way the leaves swirled in the breeze. "Here," she said, handing me her camera. "Give it a try." I hesitated. "I wouldn't know what I'm doing." "Doesn't matter. Just look for something that makes you feel something." I took the camera and started snapping away. An old man feeding pigeons, a couple sharing a quiet moment on a bench, a stray cat stretching in the sunlight. It felt strange at first, but soon, I found myself getting lost in it. For the first time in months, my mind wasn't consumed by Jessica or the kids. It was just me and the world in front of me. When we reviewed the photos later, Emily smiled. "You've got an eye for this," she said. "You should do it more often." It wasn't much, but it was the first genuine compliment I'd received in ages, and it warmed something inside me that I thought had gone cold. Later that evening, we found ourselves at my flat, sitting on the floor with a bottle of wine and a spread of cheese and baguettes. We laughed about my terrible attempts at pronouncing French words and shared stories about our favorite childhood memories. For a moment, it felt like the weight of the past had lifted. Then Emily leaned closer, her eyes searching mine. "James," she said softly, "have you thought about reaching out to your kids again? Maybe a letter, something they can read in their own time." I looked down at my glass, swirling the wine absently. "I don't know, Emily. What if they don't even open it? What if Jessica twists it into something ugly?" She placed her hand on mine, grounding me. "What if it's the first step toward them knowing the truth? You can't control what Jessica says, but you can control what you say. Show them who you are." Her words stayed with me long after she left that night. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for the perfect moment and just try. The next day, I sat at my tiny kitchen table with a pen and a blank sheet of paper. I stared at it for what felt like hours, trying to find the right words. Finally, I wrote, "Dear Sophia and Ryan, I miss you both more than I can ever say. Not a day goes by that I don't think about you and wonder how you're doing. I know things have been confusing and painful, and I'm so sorry for that. But I want you to know that no matter what, I'm always here for you. I love you with all my heart, and I hope one day we can talk and start to rebuild. Love, Dad." It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I slipped the letter into an envelope, added a small photo of the Eiffel Tower, and mailed it the next morning. As I watched the postman take it away, I felt a strange mix of hope and fear. I didn't know if it would make a difference, but at least I was trying. At least I wasn't giving up. After sending the letter, all I could do was wait. It felt like handing my heart over to a stranger and hoping they'd take care of it. Every day, I checked my phone, refreshing my messages and staring at the screen like some miracle might appear. It didn't. A week passed, then two. Nothing. I started to doubt myself. Maybe Emily was wrong, or maybe I just didn't deserve their forgiveness. Jessica had done a good job of painting me as the villain. Could a single letter undo months of lies? Emily tried to keep my spirits up. "It might take time," she said one evening as we walked along the Seine. "They're kids. They're probably sorting through a lot of feelings right now. Or maybe they didn't even read it," I muttered. "Jessica could have thrown it out before they saw it." Emily stopped walking and turned to face me. "You don't know that, James. You did what you could. The rest is out of your hands. Give it time." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. Still, I forced myself to keep moving forward. Emily and I started spending more time together, and though we hadn't labeled our relationship, there was something comforting about her presence. She was my anchor in a storm I couldn't control. One chilly November afternoon, we took a train to Giverny to visit Monet's gardens. The flowers had long since faded, but the place still held a quiet magic. Emily brought her camera, snapping photos of the bare trees and the soft reflections on the water lilies pond. She even convinced me to pose for a few shots, though I felt ridiculous. "Smile," she said, holding the camera up. "I am smiling." "That's not a smile. That's a grimace." I rolled my eyes but couldn't help laughing, and she captured the moment. It felt good to laugh, even if it was fleeting. For the first time in a long time, I started to believe that maybe life could be beautiful again. Then, a few days later, everything changed. I was sitting in my flat, flipping through a guidebook Emily had lent me, when my phone buzzed. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the notification, a message from Sophia. I stared at it, too afraid to open it. What if it was something bad? What if it confirmed my worst fears? Finally, I gathered the courage and tapped the screen. "Dad, I got your letter. I don't know what to say, but I miss you too. Can we talk sometime?" My hands shook as I reread the words, making sure they were real. She missed me. After all the silence, all the distance, my daughter missed me. I called her immediately, afraid she might change her mind if I waited too long. When she answered, her voice was hesitant but familiar. "Hi, Dad." "Sophia," I said, my voice cracking. "It's so good to hear your voice." We talked for almost an hour. She told me about school, about her new friends, about how Ryan was struggling with math but loved his soccer team. She didn't say much about Jessica, and I didn't push. I just listened, grateful for every word she shared. Before we hung up, I asked, "Soph, do you think I could talk to Ryan sometime? I miss him too." There was a pause, and then she said, "I'll try, Dad. He's mad, but I'll talk to him." It wasn't a promise, but it was more than I'd had in months. After we hung up, I sat there in the quiet of my flat, tears streaming down my face. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt hope, not just a fleeting spark, but something real. Emily came over later that night, and I told her everything. She hugged me tight, whispering, "See? They love you, James. They just needed a reminder." Maybe she was right. Maybe this was the start of something new, a chance to rebuild the bridge Jessica had burned. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I felt like I had a chance to make things right. And that was enough to keep me going. The days after my call with Sophia felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Knowing she missed me, that she wanted to talk, gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. I started thinking about how to rebuild my relationship with her and Ryan, even from so far away. But just as hope began to grow, Jessica made sure to remind me how much damage she could still do. Sophia called me again a few days later. This time, she sounded less cheerful, more hesitant. "Dad," she said quietly, "Mom found out we talked." My stomach sank. What did she say? She wasn't happy. "She told me you only wrote that letter to make yourself look good, that you're trying to mess with us." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. "Sophia, that's not true. I wrote to you because I love you. That's all." "I know, Dad," she said quickly, as if she didn't want me to spiral. I told her that too. It's hard when she's always so upset." "Upset with me, you mean?" "Yeah," she admitted. "I think she's still angry about everything that happened." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Sophia, listen to me. Whatever she says, I need you to remember that I love you and Ryan more than anything. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." "I know, Dad," she said softly. But the doubt in her voice was unmistakable. After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the walls of my flat. Jessica had already taken so much: our marriage, our home, my daily life with the kids. Now she was trying to take away the one thing I had left, their trust. The anger bubbled up inside me, threatening to boil over, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing control wouldn't help anyone, least of all my kids. Emily noticed my mood the next time we met for coffee. "You're quiet today," she said, tilting her head as she studied me. "What's going on?" I told her about Sophia's call, about Jessica's lies and how helpless I felt. Emily listened, her brow furrowed in concern. "It sounds like Jessica's trying to hold on to control," she said thoughtfully. "Maybe she's afraid of losing the kids' loyalty." "Loyalty?" I scoffed. This isn't a war. They're our kids, not soldiers. Of course, Emily said gently. But for her, it might feel like one. She's probably scared that if they see your side of things, it'll make her look bad. I hadn't thought about it that way before. Jessica had always been proud, almost to a fault. She hated admitting when she was wrong, hated the idea of anyone thinking less of her. Maybe this was her way of protecting her image, even at the cost of our kids' perception of me. Do you think I should confront her? I asked, half knowing what the answer would be. Emily shook her head. Not yet. Let your relationship with Sophia grow first. The stronger your bond with her becomes, the less power Jessica's words will have. Her advice made sense, but it didn't make the waiting any easier. Every day that passed without hearing from Ryan felt like a stab to the heart. I kept telling myself to be patient, to give him time, but the silence was deafening. Then one evening, Sophia texted me out of the blue, "Ryan wants to talk to you." I couldn't believe it. After weeks of nothing, he finally wanted to hear from me. I called immediately, my hands shaking as I waited for him to pick up. "Hi, Dad," he said, his voice quieter and more uncertain than I remembered. He was only 8, still so little, and hearing him felt like coming home. "Ryan, buddy. I've missed you so much," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I miss you too," he said softly. "Sophia says you're in Paris." "I am," I said, smiling even though he couldn't see me. "It's a beautiful city. Maybe one day, I can bring you and your sister here to see it." "Mom says you left because you don't love us anymore," he blurted out, his voice trembling. "Is that true?" "No, Ryan," I said firmly. "That's not true at all. I left because I needed some time to figure things out, but I love you and Sophia more than anything. I'm still your dad, and I always will be." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I miss when we were all together." "I know, buddy," I said, my throat tightening. "I miss that too. But no matter what, I'm here for you. Always." By the time we ended the call, I felt both relieved and heartbroken. Relieved that Ryan had opened the door, even just a crack. Heartbroken because I couldn't reach through the phone and hug him, couldn't be there to wipe away his tears or make him laugh. But at least now, the door was open. And I wasn't going to stop fighting for them, not for 1 second. Ryan's call stayed with me for days. It wasn't long, but it was enough to remind me why I was fighting. He was still so young, caught in the middle of something he didn't understand. I replayed his words, "I miss when we were all together," over and over, wishing I could fix what was broken. Sophia started calling more often, filling me in on her life. She told me about her new art project, a portrait series she was working on for school. "I'm using charcoal," she said excitedly. "It's messy, but it's fun." "Messy is good," I said, smiling. "Art should be messy sometimes. You'll have to show me when you're done." "Maybe," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. With Ryan, it was slower. He was more cautious, his calls short and guarded. But he started sharing little things. How his soccer team won their last game, how he built a Lego spaceship that could totally beat the Millennium Falcon. Every time I hung up, I felt a flicker of hope. They were opening up, little by little, and I clung to that. Jessica, of course, didn't make it easy. She sent a text one day, "Stop confusing the kids. You're just making things harder for everyone." I didn't respond. Emily's advice echoed in my mind. Focus on the kids, not her. Emily remained my rock. One afternoon, we sat in the Jardin de Tuileries, watching the leaves fall. I told her about Ryan's call, how I was finally starting to feel like their dad again. "That's because you are their dad," she said firmly. "No one can take that away, not even Jessica." Her belief in me was a lifeline. Slowly, the cracks in my heart didn't feel so deep. My kids weren't lost to me. They were still there, waiting for me to show them I wasn't giving up. And I wouldn't. Not now, not ever. As the days passed, my calls with Sophia and Ryan became more regular. They weren't long or always deep, but they were ours. Sophia started asking about Paris, what the Eiffel Tower looked like at night, if the pastries were really as good as people said. I told her about the crepes from a street vendor near my flat and promised to take her there someday. Ryan was slower to warm up. He'd share snippets about his day, his soccer team's new jerseys, or a funny thing his teacher said, but he still kept a little distance. I didn't push. I knew trust couldn't be rushed. One evening, Sophia surprised me by sending a photo of one of her charcoal portraits. It was a sketch of Ryan playing soccer mid-kick. It wasn't perfect, she said so herself, but I thought it was beautiful. This is amazing, sophomore. You've got real talent, I told her. Thanks, she said, her voice shy but proud. Ryan liked it too. Hearing that felt like progress, however small. Jessica, though, wasn't letting up. She sent another text. You're confusing them. They don't need this back and forth. It took everything in me not to respond. Instead, I kept focusing on my kids. Emily helped me stay grounded. She's trying to rattle you, she said one afternoon as we walked along the Seine. Don't let her. The kids are starting to see who you are. Just keep showing them. I nodded, grateful for her steady presence. By the end of the week, Ryan called me out of the blue. Dad, guess what? My team won today, and I scored a goal, he said, his excitement bubbling through the phone. That's amazing, buddy. Did you celebrate? Yeah, we got pizza after. I wish you were there. His words hit me hard, but I kept my voice steady. I wish I was too. I'm so proud of you, Ryan. Thanks, he said, his voice softer now. I miss you, Dad. I miss you too, buddy. So much. When we hung up, I sat quietly, letting the moment sink in. It wasn't everything, but it was a step. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right path. With each call, the bond between me and the kids grew stronger. Sophia sent more of her sketches, one of the Eiffel Tower, inspired by the stories I'd told her. She had an eye for detail that reminded me of how focused she was even as a little girl, spending hours perfecting her drawings. Ryan started opening up too. He told me about his favorite soccer player and asked if I'd seen any games in Paris. Maybe we can go to a match together one day, he said hesitantly. I'd love that, buddy. You pick the team, and I'll make it happen. The idea seemed to excite him. It was small, but it felt like we were building something. Jessica, of course, was still Jessica. One evening, Sophia mentioned how upset her mom got whenever she talked about me. I think she doesn't like me talking to you, Dad, she said softly. I took a deep breath. Soph, I know this is hard, but you don't have to pick sides. I just want you to know I'm always here for you and Ryan, no matter what. Okay, she whispered, and I could hear the conflict in her voice. After we hung up, I felt the familiar ache of frustration. Jessica's influence was still there, but I reminded myself to focus on the progress I'd made. The kids were talking to me, that was something. Emily helped me hold on to that hope. She'd been working on her photography project and often brought me along for shoots. One afternoon, as we walked through the streets of Montmartre, she snapped a photo of me without warning. What was that for? I asked, laughing. You looked peaceful, she said simply. It was such a small thing, but her words stayed with me. Maybe I was starting to feel a little peace again. Not because everything was fixed, far from it, but because I was finally moving forward, step by step. And then one evening, I got a text from Sophia. Ryan wants to know if we can FaceTime this weekend. Would that be okay? I stared at the screen, a lump forming in my throat. For the first time, Ryan wanted to see me, not just hear me. Of course, I replied. I can't wait. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that had been missing, hope. Maybe, just maybe, I was getting my kids back. The day of the FaceTime call, I was nervous. I hadn't seen Sophia and Ryan's faces in months, not since the custody battle, and I worried they might look at me like I was a stranger. Emily noticed my fidgeting as we sat at a cafe that morning. You're going to do great, she said, placing a reassuring hand on mine. Just be yourself, James. They love you. At 5 p.m. sharp, my phone buzzed. I sat at my kitchen table, took a deep breath, and answered. There they were, my kids, my heart in two small faces. Hi, Dad. Sophia said with a smile. Ryan gave a shy wave, but stayed close to his sister. Hey, you two. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's so good to see you. We talked about everything and nothing. Sophia's school project, Ryan's soccer games, how tall he'd gotten. I'm almost taller than Sophia now, he said, grinning. No way. I teased. Soph, you'd better watch out. Ryan's going to tower over you soon. She laughed, and for a moment, it felt like the old days. Toward the end of the call, Sophia asked about Paris. Do you have a favorite place yet? Probably Montmartre, I said. There's a hill where you can see the whole city. It's beautiful, especially at sunset. That sounds amazing, she said, her eyes lighting up. Ryan chimed in, "Do they have good pizza there?" "Not as good as ours back home," I admitted, smiling. "But the crepes are pretty great." The call lasted almost an hour, and by the time we said goodbye, my heart felt full in a way it hadn't in a long time. As the screen went dark, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For the first time since Jessica left, I felt truly connected to my kids again. It wasn't perfect, there was still so much to rebuild, but it was a start. Emily came over that evening to celebrate. We shared a simple dinner of bread, cheese, and wine, and I told her every detail of the call. She smiled as I recounted Ryan's questions and Sophia's stories, her eyes warm with encouragement. "You're doing it, James," she said softly. "You're getting them back." For the first time, I believed her. The pieces of my life were still scattered, but they were slowly coming together. And for now, that was enough. The FaceTime call was a turning point. Sophia and Ryan began reaching out more often, texting me little updates about their day. Ryan sent a picture of the Lego spaceship he built, while Sophia shared another sketch, this time of the view she imagined I had in Paris. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like we were starting to find each other again. Then one day, Sophia brought up something unexpected during a call. "Mom's been really stressed lately," she said hesitantly. "She's been arguing with Michael a lot." Hearing his name sent a jolt through me. Michael, the man who tore my family apart, was still in the picture, though apparently not as smoothly as Jessica had hoped. "I'm sorry to hear that, Soph," I said carefully, not wanting to pry too much. "How are you and Ryan holding up?" "We're okay," she said, but her voice wavered. "It's just hard sometimes. Remember, you can always talk to me about anything," I reminded her. "I'm here for both of you, no matter what." She nodded, and we changed the subject, but the conversation lingered in my mind. Jessica's perfect new life didn't seem so perfect anymore, and part of me couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. She'd chosen Michael over her family, and now it seemed she was realizing the cost. Later that week, Ryan called me on his own for the first time. "Dad," he said quietly, "Sophia says you're really happy in Paris. Are you?" I paused, surprised by his question. "I'm doing better, buddy," I said honestly. "But I miss you and Sophia every day. You're the most important thing in my life, and nothing will ever change that." "Do you think you'll ever come back?" he asked. "I want to," I said, my voice steady. "When the time is right, I'll be there. And when I do, I'll do everything I can to make things better for us." "Okay," he said softly. "I miss you, Dad." "I miss you too, Ryan. So much." After we hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions: hope, guilt, and determination. My kids were opening up to me, but their questions made it clear they still felt the gap my absence had created. That night, I told Emily about the calls. "They're starting to see the real you," she said, her eyes warm. "Jessica's control over them is slipping." "Maybe," I said. "But I can't undo the damage overnight. It feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back." "That's still progress," she said with a smile. She was right, of course. And though part of me wished Jessica would stop meddling, I knew the only thing that mattered was proving to Sophia and Ryan that I was still their dad, the one they could count on, no matter what. As the weeks went by, Sophia and Ryan became a bigger part of my life again. The calls were more frequent, their laughter more natural, and their trust seemed to be growing. But as my bond with them strengthened, the tension with Jessica escalated. One evening, after a long day wandering the Musée d'Orsay with Emily, I got a call I wasn't expecting from Jessica. "Why are you turning the kids against me?" she snapped the moment I answered. "Jessica, I'm not doing that," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm just being there for them. That's all I've ever wanted." "Well, now they're questioning everything," she said angrily. "Sophia asked if I lied about why you left. Do you know how that makes me feel?" "How you feel?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my tone. "Jessica, this isn't about you. It's about the kids. They deserve the truth. They deserve stability," she fired back. "And you running off to Paris didn't exactly help with that." "I left because you destroyed our family," I said quietly. "But that doesn't mean I've stopped being their father." There was silence on the other end. Finally, Jessica said, "Michael and I are splitting up." The words hung in the air. Part of me wanted to say, "Good. You deserve this." But the other part, the part that still wanted to shield my kids, felt uneasy. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "How are Sophia and Ryan handling it?" "They're confused," she admitted. Sophia's been distant, and Ryan doesn't talk to Michael anymore. It's like they blame me for everything. I didn't respond, unsure if she was venting or fishing for sympathy. Just don't fill their heads with ideas about me being the bad guy, she added, her voice softer now, almost pleading. They're all I have. Jessica, I said evenly, all I want is for them to know they're loved. By both of us. Let's focus on that. She didn't reply, and after a few awkward goodbyes, she hung up. That call stayed with me. Jessica's perfect life with Michael had fallen apart, and she was starting to feel the cracks she'd created. But my focus wasn't on her, it was on my kids. If Jessica's struggles meant they turned to me more, I'd be ready. That weekend, Sophia called and mentioned the split. Mom's been really upset, she said. But honestly, I don't think Michael was that great. What makes you say that? I asked gently. He didn't really care about us, she admitted. It was always about him and Mom. Ryan didn't like him either. I let her talk, listening as she opened up about the tension in their house. By the end of the call, I felt closer to her than I had in years. Afterward, Emily and I sat on a bench near the Seine, watching the boats drift by. You're becoming their anchor, she said, leaning her head against my shoulder. I hope so, I said. They need someone to lean on right now. You're doing it, James. Little by little, she said. And for the first time, I believed her. The cracks in Jessica's life were growing, but for me, they were creating openings, opportunities to be the dad my kids needed. And I wasn't going to let them slip away. Jessica's call lingered in my mind, but I pushed it aside to focus on Sophia and Ryan. They needed stability, not more drama. Over the next few weeks, our calls became a regular rhythm. Sophia's confidence grew as she shared her artwork with me, and Ryan started calling me on his own, excited to tell me about his soccer matches. One evening, Sophia confided, Mom's been kind of quiet lately. I think she's sad about Michael. How do you feel about that? I asked gently. She hesitated. I don't know. I guess I'm just tired of everything being so messy. I understand, I said. But remember, no matter how messy things get, I'm here for you and Ryan. Always. Thanks, Dad, she said, her voice soft but genuine. Ryan, meanwhile, had started talking more freely. He called one afternoon just to tell me about a goal he scored during practice. It was awesome, Dad. You should have seen it. I wish I could have been there, I said, meaning it. Maybe next time, he replied, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an empty hope. Jessica stayed in the background, quiet but watchful. I knew she was still struggling with her split from Michael, but for now, she seemed to be keeping her distance. Emily noticed the change in me during one of our strolls through Montmartre. You seem lighter, she said, slipping her arm through mine. Talking to the kids does that, I said with a smile. Good, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. You deserve that. For the first time, it felt like the pieces of my life were falling into place. Not perfectly, but enough to hold on to. Life settled into a new rhythm. The calls with Sophia and Ryan became the highlight of my week. They weren't long, but they were full of small, meaningful moments. Sophia showed me more of her sketches, even asking for tips on a drawing of the Eiffel Tower. Ryan started sharing jokes, terrible, kid-level jokes that still made me laugh. Why did the soccer ball quit the team? He asked during one call. I don't know why. It was tired of getting kicked around. I laughed, and so did he. Hearing his giggles made my day every time. Jessica, meanwhile, stayed mostly silent. I suspected she was still reeling from her breakup with Michael, but I didn't pry. I just focused on the kids. Then one evening, Sophia asked something unexpected. Dad, do you think you'll come home for Christmas? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'd like to, Soph, I said carefully. But it depends on how things go. Would you want me to? Yeah, she said softly. I think Ryan would too. Hearing that felt like a victory, even if it was a small one. Later, I told Emily about the conversation. They're starting to trust you again, she said. That's a big step. I hope so, I said, though a part of me still worried. Jessica might not make it easy. But for now, I let myself enjoy the moment. My kids wanted me in their lives, and that was all I'd ever wanted. The idea of going home for Christmas planted itself firmly in my mind. I hadn't seen Sophia and Ryan in person for months, and the thought of being with them during the holidays gave me something to hope for. But I knew it wouldn't be simple, Jessica's reaction was an unpredictable variable. I brought it up cautiously during my next call with Sophia. "So, I've been thinking about Christmas," I said. "If it works out, maybe I could come back for a visit. Would you like that?" Her face lit up. "Really? That would be awesome. Ryan's going to be so excited." Her excitement gave me courage. "I'll figure it out, okay? Just don't tell your mom yet. I want to make sure I can work everything out first." "Okay," she said, grinning. "But hurry. Christmas isn't that far away." Ryan's reaction, when Sophia told him, was even better. He called me later that evening, his voice full of excitement. "You're coming back for Christmas? Really?" "I'm going to try, buddy," I said. "I want to see you and Sophia more than anything." "Can we make pancakes like we used to?" he asked. "You bet we can," I said, my heart swelling. The next step was the hardest, talking to Jessica. I waited a couple of days before calling her, steeling myself for the conversation. When she picked up, her tone was guarded. "What do you want, James?" she asked. "I'd like to come back for Christmas," I said plainly. "To see the kids." She was silent for a moment. "You know that'll confuse them," she said, her voice clipped. "No, Jessica," I replied, keeping my tone calm. "It'll make them happy. They miss me, and I miss them. This isn't about us, it's about them." She sighed, and I could hear the tension in her voice. "I'll think about it," she said finally. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. For now, that was enough. As I hung up, I felt a mix of nerves and hope. Christmas was only a few weeks away, and the possibility of seeing my kids felt closer than it had in months. Emily, as always, was there to support me. "You've come so far, James," she said, squeezing my hand. "This is just one more step. One more step." That's all it was. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking towards something good. "Thank you, bye."